Welcome to High Ground. My name is Tanner, and today we are talking about the roster changes for the North American League going into stage number 3, the final stage of the 2022 season. So yeah, we've been talking about this in a couple of videos, but we now know all of the changes officially. All of the announcements have come out, so I reorganized things a little bit. We have the players in green that are remaining on the roster from last stage. The players in this sort of brown color are being added to the roster, and then the pink or red is the players being dropped. So we have a dozen changes, which is an absolute ton. So 12 changes over 7 teams, only 3 teams sticking with their same rosters and 2 teams making one change. That means 5 teams making the full 2 changes to the playing roster. You can only make up to 2 between stages. You have to retain 3/5 of your players, and then I think you can change as much as you want between seasons. I believe that's my understanding of it. So, okay, let's talk about it. And a lot of this might be rehashing, so bear with me a little bit. But yeah, I guess this is the final official roster change video. So yeah, Astralis, Xset, Dark Zero sticking with their old rosters. There was a little bit of rumors of Dark Zero potentially dropping Eclipse, but that didn't end up happening. And I mean, they've been good, pretty solid. They obviously missed out on the major, but not by a massive margin. So there's every possibility that they can make it to this major, but this looks to be perhaps the most competitive stage of NAL ever, which is really tough to say considering how close last stage was. But it does seem like most of the rosters making changes did make pretty much strict improvements. And I guess maybe not in a few cases. Let's talk about them, yeah. And then I guess Xset, Astralis, I didn't mention them too much, but yeah, Astralis went to both majors, so did Xset. And Astralis got second place in Charlotte, didn't make it out of groups in Berlin, but Xset made it out of groups in both. So maybe Astralis the higher high, but Xset the more consistent team. And Astralis, I suppose, consistently number 1 in NA, and Xset consistently 4th place. And I guess that's only over 2 stages, but still both placing in top 4. And obviously it's solid enough to make it to the major. So let's talk about the teams that actually made changes. So Sonics, this is one of the ones we've known for a little bit now. We were mostly waiting on TSM and Mirage for the final change, but we do have those now. Yeah, Super and Yeti leaving the roster, definitely the 2 worst performing players on the roster in terms of stats. I mean, that's not to speak about their impact outside of the stats, in the actual server, the comms and the influence and whatever. So we'll have to see how the team plays without them, but Gunnar and Geo seem to be 2 pretty stellar pickups, 3 G names now on the roster. Grixer, Gunnar, Geo. And so we'll see what happens. And as far as the pickup or the pickups for any given roster go, I think there's 4 players that were already in the league, and that is Gunnar, Geo, Sweater, and Yeti. And then we have 8 players getting their first shot in the league, and all coming up from Challenger League. And I think this is the first time. I think this is the most promotions we've ever had. Maybe some stage where a full team qualified from Challenger League, but in terms of just roster pickups, yeah, 8 is just a massive number. And so, yeah, I think super exciting stage coming up. But yeah, Sonics, I mean, what more can you say about them? It looks like an incredible team on paper. I think most people's questions is just how long it is going to take for them to fully adapt to each other as a team, because of course picking up 2 new players can be a little bit of a challenge, and maybe a little bit less so if for some reason they'd come from the same team. But Gunnar coming from Parabellum, Geo coming over from TSM, and Gunnar did quite well last stage. Geo generally, just over the years has been a very, very good player. TSM hasn't been doing that good lately, but Geo did pretty well individually last stage. And then again, Gunnar, yeah, one of the top players in the league, coming from Parabellum, who they weren't terrible. I mean, no team really was terrible last stage outside of Mirage, with every team other than them ending between 16 and 12 points. But he hasn't played on, I guess, a top team just yet. So let's see how he fares, paired up with the likes of Rex and Grixer and Kansan, a very fearsome trio. And so, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people have them as the 1st or 2nd place in their predictions. And I mean, I think putting them in top 4 feels pretty safe, but it's just so hard to call anything. And probably I'll be doing a video on that. I'll do an EUL roster update video. Maybe for LATAM I'll do one, but certainly for EU. And then I want to do at least 1 or 2 looks into the sort of going over the teams, which I'm sort of doing in this video, but I'll probably do some sort of ranking in that. Okay, so let's talk about Oxygen. One of the 2 teams making only 1 roster change, and their acquisition is a player that was already in the league. Sweater was playing over on Beastcoast, and I mean, definitely was one of the most exciting prospects when he finally made it up to Pro League. People had expected him to make it there for quite a while, and then there were some circumstances that prevented that from happening, but he's been pretty good overall. Maybe not insane, but he has been getting in an absolute ton of entry engagements. Maybe not always winning them. He certainly has takeover potential. There are 1 or 2 games that Beastcoast have played that he just straight up won it for them. And I think one of them was when they played, it was SSG on Chalet, and he dropped like 22 kills or something insane. And he just won the game for them entirely. And I mean, so maybe that'll help Oxygen. Maybe they could use a little bit of that. Laxing, very good player, but I don't know if he had quite the takeover potential. I mean, you've seen Laxing drop like an 11-0 or something, but I mean, have you ever seen, how often do you see Laxing drop 20? Consistent player, but maybe they really wanted this higher ceiling. And also seemingly maybe a little bit of a role change. I guess Sweater is changing up his roles, was playing entry on Beastcoast, will supposedly be playing flex here, but that's not exactly what Laxing was playing. I guess it's not that far off, so maybe the team will just shift up their playstyle a little bit, with Dream on the hard support, Vertical and New Earth in the entry, Sweater on the flex, and Foxay also maybe on the flex or the soft support kind of thing. So yeah, Oxygen I think is another front runner for a top team. They've been very good throughout both stages of NAL, and they only have one new player to adapt to, and it is a player that has already played in the league. So I think a lot of people have high hopes for them, and also very high hopes that this will be the change that they need to finally perform to make it to like a grand final or a major championship in terms of international play. Okay, going over to Parabellum, I think a lot of people are pretty excited about this one. Losing Gunner obviously sucks. He was very, very good last stage, and who knows what this roster could have done if they'd stuck with their previous roster, Gunner and Penguin. But Doc and Asian, definitely two exciting prospects coming up from Challenger League. I think Asian lost some hype when he turned 18 and he went up to Challenger League. He'd been playing in T3. I think tons of people thought he was going to light the world on fire, and his performance was good, but we'll have to see if he is ready to really, really do well in T1. Some players, they're just not really made for T2. It's a different play style, and they thrive much, much more in T1 than they do in T2. Maybe Asian is one of those players, so we'll have to see what actually happens. And then Doc, I think similar sort of thing. One of the most exciting players to watch this last stage. Just one of the better players, and probably one of the most deserving players to get the call up. And then over on Beast Coast, we have Xeno. I think weren't these two teaming together on a Challenger League roster, which I cannot remember the name of. I think they're on the same team though, right? And then we have Ferda as well. I think people are not too high on Beast Coast because Sweater seems very difficult to replace, and then in terms of roles, maybe Drip's difficult to replace by these two players. Maybe they won't have, and of course, lots of teams are sort of moving away from having that robust of a support structure, maybe just like one player on support, which I imagine is now going to be Anthony, maybe Slash, but probably it's going to be Anthony going back more onto the support like he played in the past on the old iteration of Beast Coast, sort of probably taking over for Drip's roles. But I think Drip did make a lot of very explosive plays, and I think maybe one of the more questioned players in the league, but I think he definitely made some things happen that other players couldn't have or wouldn't have made happen. Also, Ferda, it sounds like will not be able to play for some amount of time due to visa issues. It'll be Mark stepping in, so that's probably really going to hurt their performance. It's best of ones. Maybe they'll be able to sneak some out, but with how good like every roster looks at the moment, it feels like it's going to be hard for them to get wins with Mark subbing in, unless they knew that for a while and they had like ample amount of time to actually scrim with Mark. So I don't know how they're doing that, if they're actually still just focusing on scrimming with Ferda and how many days he's actually going to miss. So yeah, we'll have to see. But I mean, I think it's definitely a roster that has potential, but I don't think they wanted to lose Sweater, and given the option, I'm sure they would have kept him, but Sweater decided to go over to Oxygen, and so maybe a neutral change, maybe it'll end up working out really well. Maybe Xeno and or Ferda will do very, very well, but just on paper, this doesn't look like the best roster. But I mean, when Surf first came up to the league, people were doubting him, and Anthony, certainly we'll have to see some improvement from Anthony. Maybe the role change will do him good, and then Slash has had his moments, but hasn't been spectacular. So I think definitely, if you're a Beast Coast fan, there is reason to be nervous, but I think probably also reason to be hopeful with maybe two new players will really revitalize what's going on here. And they're also very close both stages to making the major. Just a little bit of heartbreak in both cases, involving some Mirage action. Okay, TSM, another team that is pretty highly questioned at the moment. I won't say it's questionable. Snake, I think, did very well in the Gamers 8 tournament. Was he the top performer this stage in CL? One of the top, if not just straight up the top performer statistically. And then Gasher, also very highly rated, and he's had some not so great stages in the past, and I think he is probably the most doubted player coming into the stage, especially as far as new pickups are going. I don't think very many people ever expected Gasher to actually make it to Pro League, and so I mean, for that reason, I'd like to see him succeed. It's a little bit of an underdog story, and if he does well and Snake continues to do well, I mean, there's every reason to believe TSM will do well. But I mean, just on paper, replacing Chala and Geo, two like legendary players with Snake and Gasher, It just seems a little bit weird, but I mean, yeah, obviously there was something wrong with TSM. They did get the SI win, which is, well, the biggest win you can get, but they struggled pretty hard in stage 1. They still struggled pretty hard in stage 2, even going back to stage 3 of last year. I can't remember off the top of my head. I don't think they did especially well. They didn't make it to the major. Maybe they're a 5th, something like that. But yeah, they just have not been a force within the region for quite a while, and maybe this is exactly the change they need. In terms of roles here, maybe I'll probably talk about this in another in the next video that I do. I maybe talked about like sweaters roles and whatever, but I'll talk about all of the roles. Yeah, over here, so it was unclear who was going to be going to Breach and what Gasher and Achieve were going to be playing. So it sounds like Gasher is going to be playing hard Breach. So a little bit of a shift. He was playing like a lot of Sledge and whatnot in Challenger League, but now going over to the hard Breach, replacing Geo. And they're probably restructuring the team just similar to how other teams are doing it. Snake, I mean, I have to assume is on entry along with, I don't know, is it Bolo, is it Merc? Like maybe a lot of people thought Merc was going to be the one going over to Breach, but maybe he's going to go to a more of a soft support, flex support type role. I assume Achieved is going to stay on the soft Breach. And so we'll see what the structure looks like exactly, but my understanding is that Gasher will be the one playing the hard support, playing the Thermite, Ace, Habana, whatever's called for, and maybe more Thermite, Habana, and then perhaps Merc will pick up the Maverick or the Ace when needed. Okay, and then so going over to SSG, we have Yeti in for Skies, Rampy, Bosco, Fultz, Hot and Cold sticking around, and they've had this core for a very, very long time, and then I guess Hot and Cold's been on their roster for over a year now, and yeah, he had an incredible year last year, not so good this year. Let's see if him or somebody else on the roster can pick up the slack. They very narrowly missed out on the major in stage 1, and then 9th place in stage 2, but still, I mean, pretty narrowly missed out on the major with how slim the margins were between 16 and 12 points, of course, for 1st through 9th place. But again, they were unfortunately the 9th place team, missing out on getting any sort of SI points. It is going to be quite the struggle for a lot of these teams to make SI. I mean, I think the top 5 here all have a pretty good shot. And then I think Mirage, there's no chance. But I think these other 4 have a shot, but it's going to be pretty tough. And for any of them to actually go to SI via points, I'm sure they have to go to this next major and probably even do really well at the major in some cases. And okay, so yeah, talking about Yeti. Since I was talking about roles, it seems like he'll probably be able to play pretty much the same roles he was playing on Sonics. That seems like it'll slot in pretty well. Bosco on hard breach, Yeti on Yeti roles. The flank watch lurker type sort of flexi role. Maybe play the Maverick when necessary, and then Hot and Cold. Maybe there's a little bit of overlap here. Hot and Cold maybe sort of kind of plays the 2nd/3rd entry, or however you want to call it, and lurk, but maybe Hot and Cold will just go on to the, I mean, I don't know, does he play Sledge? Does Rampy not play Sledge? I don't know, but I have to imagine, yeah, Bosco on hard breach, Fultz on entry, and then Rampy, Hot and Cold, Yeti, maybe there's a little bit of overlap, and I guess my lack of sureness overall does stem from the fact that lots of teams are sort of changing up their play style, so you can't just say this person will slot into these exact roles because, again, roles are being sort of shifted up. And then finally, yeah, Mirage, Benji, Kento, Melted being joined by Dexter, and Mohesi, Nyx, and Marmalade being dropped, and I guess Nyx going over like a coaching role or something, so I mean, we'll see if that has any real effect, but I think these look like 2 of the best pickups overall. I think Snake, yeah, the stats were great, but I think people have mentioned he's maybe has attitude issues. Gasher, very doubted. Zeno and Ferda seem good, but maybe 2 of the not the absolute top tier. And then I think Doc and Asian are pretty exciting as well, but well, remain to be seen. I feel like the combination of Dexter and Mohesi feels like the best pair of Challenger League pickups as far as these 3 and this one go. So we'll see, can they bring Mirage up out of 10th place? As far as the season goes, it doesn't seem that easy. They're a whole 7 points behind TSM, or a whole 5 points behind Parabellum, but in terms of in stage number 3, probably they can outplace Beastcoast, especially with the Ferda issue going on. Because I think this is a pretty decent looking roster. Kento, he didn't do that bad for his rookie stage. He was playing on Mirage. It is what it is. I think Melted also hasn't really gotten a fair shake. I think he's quite a good player. Benji, for as much shit as he gets, I think he's also like a pretty solid player. He's maybe had some bad stages, but he's also had some decent stages. Maybe he doesn't have that high of a ceiling. I think his floor is pretty, not that low though. And then yeah, Dexter and Mohesi. So the roles seem a little bit unclear on this team. I don't know who's actually playing the breach. Maybe Benji will play the breach. Maybe it'll be somebody else weirdly, but yeah, I think this is this is a pretty talented roster overall, and I think it seems like a pretty market improvement. You know, maybe Marmalade would have made sense to keep in terms of roles, but perhaps one of these guys will actually slot pretty well into the hard breach. We'll have to see how that actually pans out. Yeah, so I mean, this looks like the best roster Mirage has had in a while. Will it be enough? I don't know. You know, very competitive looking stage coming up, and so that's gonna do it. I guess, you know, the video's gotten pretty lengthy here, but right, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, suggestions, corrections, any of that stuff, I probably have time for like 1 or 2 videos before the stage actually starts. It starts up, NAL starts in 4 days. I think UL starts in 3 days on the 12th for UL, 13th for NA, and then APAC the next couple days, LATAM, I don't remember which day it is, but okay, you know, a lot of stuff coming up. All the leagues are finally coming back, and yeah, I do want to do maybe a little bit more coverage, like talk about the teams or players or something a little bit more comprehensively, but you know, you probably get the gist. I did talk about quite a lot in this video, and I think that's gonna do it. So yeah, leave me a like, leave me a subscription, that would be very much appreciated, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.